campaigned, I talked about crime, but I never knew that we were going to get into it like we did. You know, I mean, I used to watch these cities with the murders. Chicago recently had one deal where they had 11 murders in one weekend, and they said, well, yeah, but it was a holiday weekend. They actually told me that was the reason, like it was okay because it was a holiday. It was Labor Day. These people are the worst. They really have to, they better, I tell you what, the people in Chicago and the people in places like that can be fixed. At some point, it gets to where you can't fix it anymore. It's too far gone. And we have some cities like that. But these are great cities that can be fixed. I'm going to be strongly recommending, at the request of government officials, which is always nice, that you start looking at San Francisco. I think we can make San Francisco. There's one of our great cities 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and now it's a mess. And we have great support in San Francisco, so I'd like to recommend that for inclusion, maybe in your campaign.
Hey, welcome into Courageous Media. Thanks so much for joining me here. Really appreciate you rolling up. Political Fisherman in the house. Got the notification. That's awesome. Hey, everybody, if you're watching, please smash that like button for me. Subscribe, hit that bell, turn on the notifications. Even if you did it already, be wary that YouTube will cancel them just randomly. So really appreciate everybody rolling up. We've got a major story today, but we're going to lead into it by looking at a couple other things in California before we get into the meat of what we really want to talk about, which is a combination of Gavin Newsom's utter and catastrophic failure that has now led to the deaths of 3 more American citizens. And we're going to show you the video, which is just appalling. But before we get into that, let's check out Gavin Newsom's reaction as Trump right there talks about surging federal troops into San Francisco. This on the eve of the appellate court essentially greenlighting the deployment of the National Guard to Portland, canceling the temporary restraining order, also then by default greenlighting the deployment of the National Guard to Chicago. So we've got Trump winning legally in federal court, in federal appeals court. And so now he can actually start making some of these places great again. It's absolutely amazing. Doing what he did in DC and Memphis, which are phenomenal success stories. Why you will never hear about them on the media whatsoever. Go to any media channel and see, is there any reporting on Washington, D.C. crime in the last 30 days? Nope. Any reporting on Memphis crime in the last 30 days? Nope. That's because they are major success stories. And Trump wants to do the same thing in San Francisco. But of course, Gavin Newsom does not want him to do that because he's an utter and complete life loser. He is a Marxist, globalist, leftist who wants to destroy California. He's accomplished that, wants to destroy America and somehow set himself up to be president. But I really appreciate everybody rolling up. Political Fisherman in the house. Lynn Sanger in the house as well. Thanks so much for being here. All right, check out, because here is Gavin Newsom's response to Donald Trump saying that he's going to surge federal troops to San Francisco, which if anybody's been to San Francisco, it has become an absolute cesspool. We were there just a few years ago, and it was so bad. Syringes, feces, everywhere on the street. You didn't feel safe. It didn't used to be like that. I almost moved there 20 years ago, but for work, and it was not like that at all, but it has gotten so bad. Now check out Gavin Newsom's response to President Trump.
We're going to be fierce in terms of our response. We're going to be focused, and quite literally, this is the lawsuit that I will file within a nanosecond of any efforts to send the military to one of America's great cities, San Francisco, that is enjoying 60% reduction in homicide, or rather homicide reduction that's the lowest it's been in 60 years. It's one of the safest large cities in this country that's experienced an economic rebirth and growth. Only Donald Trump can wreck that. And we will push back with clarity and conviction, and we'll continue to.
Now, none of those things are actually true. Crime is not down, because we're now finding out that in these deep blue states, places like Illinois and Chicago specifically, they have doctored the crime statistics. They have actually published fraudulent crime statistics. We know that for a fact in Chicago. And it is no doubt that it is also happening in California when they want to portray this narrative of, oh, crime is down, crime is down. No, it's not. It's not, you're just not reporting it. Because in Chicago and other places, we found out that they reported actual homicides as police interactions, or not even a suspicious death, a death of natural causes, strange stuff like this, instead of domestic violence, instead of other things like that. So we're getting doctored crime statistics. So he's going to file suit to prevent Trump from going and cleaning up San Francisco. Why? Because Gavin Newsom is all in for the illegal criminal aliens and for criminals in general. They love criminals. They will do anything in their power. They'll go out of their way to protect an actual violent criminal. Now, if you, an American citizen, especially one who identifies on the conservative side of the spectrum, were to do anything, they will throw the book at you for stuff you didn't even do, hence J6 and all this other nonsense. But now check this out. Now this gets into the meat of the story, because realize that we've got more illegal alien crime on, this one is on video. And the reason I say this is a crime, because this particular individual is an illegal alien in the country illegally. So that's crime number one, amongst a host of others. Two, they're involved in a vehicular homicide with a truck, a semi-truck. One of the CDLs, commercial driver's license, that Gavin Newsom gave out to illegal criminal aliens who most of them can't even speak English, let alone read street signs, and yet they're given commercial driver's licenses. And this is the result, the death of American citizens. Check this out. This is absolutely egregious. I apologize in advance for the video because it is somewhat disturbing. So here we go.
This horrific, now take a look. This is exclusive dash cam video that is now the subject of several law enforcement investigations. Shows the moment a red semi-truck plowed into a number of vehicles on the westbound 10 freeway in Ontario just after 1 p.m. yesterday.
I mean, look at that. They're stationary, and this truck has got to be doing 60, 70 miles an hour. Come to find out, this person was driving under the influence of both, I believe it was both, they found both drugs and alcohol in his system.
Plowed into a number of vehicles on the westbound 10 freeway in Ontario just after 1 p.m. yesterday. The CHP told the LA Times the driver of this big rig is a 21-year-old man who is now under arrest on suspicion of driving under the influence of drugs. A total of 4 semis were involved and also 4 passenger vehicles, one of them exploding in flames. 3 people were killed and 4 others were taken to local hospitals. This horrific crash happened just east of the 15 freeway and shut down all westbound lanes for more than 12 hours. Thousands of drivers were trapped in the gridlock just as the evening commute was getting underway. It also happened near the Ontario airport, so the crash likely delayed people that were trying to get to their flights.
So, I mean, there's no wonder there were deaths in this crash, well, especially when you see that red car folded up underneath the other semi, as he literally pinned, crushed 3 cars in between him and another stationary semi. And that happens when you have a semi doing 70 plus miles an hour, I'm guessing on the speed, just based on the visuals, plow into stationary vehicles. And so now you've got an illegal criminal alien who most likely can't speak English or speaks broken English, probably can't read street signs, it has a commercial driver's license, and is under the influence of drugs. So I guess we're giving out commercial driver's licenses nowadays in California without drug tests. It must be if you're an illegal, because in order to get other licenses in California, you have to jump through 57 hoops. I guess if you're a criminal illegal alien, then you can get these licenses willy-nilly. This is Gavin Newsom's California. This is what it's become. It's become a crime cesspool in which even now, people not doing necessarily criminal activities, not overtly, not someone taking a gun and trying to shoot somebody, are now resulting in deaths because of Gavin Newsom's failure. Now, we're going to get into the rest of this, because at the same time, Gavin Newsom is committing crimes in order to prop California up. But I just want to take a break, welcome everyone, and thanks so much for joining me here at Courageous Media. Really appreciate you rolling up. Political Fisherman in the house, Lynn Sanger in the house, Lottie Lane in the house. Really appreciate you being here. Kelly Ramos. This is absolutely amazing stuff. Now, let's dive into the other half of this, because in order to even make all of this, it's not workable, but even for him to survive budget-wise, Gavin Newsom is now implicated in a major fraud in which him and a myriad of other California officials should be indicted and tried, and if convicted, go to prison for laundering taxpayer money, not for their own necessarily personal use, certainly for their own personal gain as politicians, but they are laundering taxpayer money into the coffers of California. Now, check this out. I'm going to start with one video where this one congressman talks about it. We're going to get into a CNN clip, and then finally, we're going to wrap it all up in another video. Here we go.
It is so bizarre hearing them say that, like, oh, free healthcare for illegal immigrants. We would never do anything like that. Gavin Newsom did precisely that. He literally bankrupted our entire Medicaid program in California. He had to take out an emergency loan, and he had to go to the legislature for a bailout because they said it was only going to cost a few $1 billion. Then it cost $10 billion the first year, even more the second year. So he has now canceled that program, by the way, but it came only after we were able to pressure him to do so using the tools that we have at the federal level.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've got Gavin Newsom openly giving healthcare to illegal aliens, but how does he actually pay for all this? Because realize that California is in a major budget crisis. How does he get, I mean, it was in a major budget crisis 15 years ago before the latest influx of illegal aliens, in which their budget was upside down by some $10 billion. And you could look at the math and it was all due to what they were spending on illegals. And now they've gone and added healthcare and everything else for the newest influx of millions of illegals that came in under the Biden administration. So how's he paying for all this? Well, check this out. We're going to check out a CNN clip first, which gets into it a little bit, and then we're going to clarify everything for you. All right, here we go.
But the fault of it is not illegal immigrants. When people go to hospitals and have to wait hours in the emergency room, you know why? Because when you pass a bill that closes rural hospitals, you have to drive, and it consolidates the amount of patients. When doctors have to work extremely long hours, my mom just had a heart procedure. The doctor had to do 50 heart catheterizations in one day. Do you think that's not because, let me tell you, not one person he did a heart catheterization on that day was an illegal immigrant.
I have no
Abby's
idea.
Question,
but the question is,
I'm not finished. Thank you. Abby's question was, is this a way that Republicans are just using illegal immigrants to deflect the conversation?
And the answer
is yes.
No, it is
it's
not.
Yes,
You
because
refuse to look at the facts.
Illegal immigrants are not the reason why our healthcare system is broken.
Yeah.
Illegal aliens are a major portion of why the entire country's healthcare system is broken. They're a big part. They're not 100%, but they are certainly the reason that California's is broken. And they're also the reason why Gavin Newsom engaged in fraud to try to undergird it. Check this out.
It's not deflection at all. In fact, I brought receipts. So here's the CMS, the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services, right here with their press release earlier this year saying they were having to increase their oversight on states like California who were abusing Medicaid and classifying it as an EUSA, an emergency system, when it wasn't. You've got the average state spends 5% of its Medicaid roughly on emergency services. California, 35 to 40%. Why would that be? Because California passed a state law that says we will fund Medicaid for illegals, and then, oh, by the way, we'll raise our provider taxes, and then, oh, by the way, we'll use that as a match to draw down federal funds. And they're using this whole cavitation process.
An accounting trick to put it on the taxpayer.
Money is fungible, and California's loophole is abusing it.
They are using an accounting trick. No, it's not just an accounting trick. It's actual fraud. So basically what they're doing is they're classifying a whole bunch of services as emergency services. So the hospitals will perform the service. Then they will submit to the state budget, to the state Medicaid budget for reimbursement. So the hospitals get paid, or they basically submit their bill in this case, and I'll show you how this works, to the state. The state pays the bill and then submits to the federal government for 50% matching. The problem is all the fraud on the front end. Check this out. This is going to blow your mind. And why Gavin Newsom and a whole host of California state officials are not in handcuffs is absolutely mind-boggling to me. Check this out.
A massive investigation has uncovered that California may have committed major fraud against the US government by exploiting this complicated loophole that's allowed them to steal billions in federal taxpayer funds. One of the largest and most convoluted schemes in modern history has been discovered during a review of California's medical financial records. Investigators found that under Gavin Newsom's leadership, the Golden State has essentially been funneling taxpayer money from all across America to prop up California's own finances. The ingenious plan started in 2022 and it revolves around the complex concept of intergovernmental transfers, which in simple terms is when a local hospital or county makes a transfer to the state Medicaid agency for payments of medical services such as ambulance rides after the transfers are.
All right, so this is what that CNN clip was talking about. He was talking about classifying things as emergency services and then transferring that to the state budget, to the state Medicaid office, transferring that bill. The state Medicaid office then submits to the federal government for matching funds. So check out how this works.
The states can then request a matching amount of money from the federal government, but Newsom's California abused this system by raising the price of a simple ambulance ride by nearly 300%, and then once the local hospitals made the transfer to the states and the state received the matching funds from the federal government, they then instead paid a private ambulance service which cost only a fraction of the original price, pocketing the difference. But the thing is, this is all legal and the government must find a way to close this loophole.
It's not legal. It's fraud, because what they did was they raised the price of ambulance services by 300%. So essentially they said, okay, we're going to allow ambulances to charge, instead of $100, actually $1,000, instead of $1,000, $6,000, $3,000. So $3,000 for an ambulance ride. The hospital gets the bill, a $3,000 bill. The hospital goes, oh, no. I'm transferring that to the state Medicaid office. The state Medicaid office says, oh, okay, I've got this. They submit that bill to the federal government and say, hey, we need our 50% matching funds for emergency services. The federal government, because they're just monolithic and they can't check up on all this stuff, they issue $1,500 back to the state of California, who then turns around and goes to either that ambulance company based on, side agreement, or a different provider, and basically says, okay, I'm paying you, instead of $3,000, I'm going to pay you $500 or $400 or $1,000, whatever the case may be. Whatever they decided to pay that provider who submitted the bill to the hospital now gets paid a fraction of the money, a fraction of the bill, and California pockets the rest of the money to help prop up their failing healthcare system and budget. This cannot be legal. This is fraud. The fact that they submitted a bill for one amount, got federal funds reimbursed, federal matching funds, and then paid a different amount, that is not legal. That is fraud. Getting matching funds from the government, that is legal. But getting matching funds from the government for a bill that you then short pay is not legal. That is fraud, especially when you did it up front. Let me know what you think in the comments. Lynn Sanger, this is why the government's keeping the government shut down. These people have figured out ingenious ways, corrupt, evil, fraudulent, nevertheless, ingenious, shrewd ways to launder taxpayer money into their own pockets, into their state government pockets, into the DNC and politician campaign pockets, and into their own personal pockets. Realize this is what the $50 billion in USAID money was part of. It was a giant money laundering scheme. In fact, I would say that probably 50 to 60% of the entire federal budget, all federal expenditures, is money laundered, fraudulently laundered. Money that is earmarked, appropriated by Congress for one purpose. It goes through a series of NGOs, from a government agency through a series of NGOs back into DNC coffers, politician campaign coffers, and politician campaign pockets, let alone all the people in the NGOs who are pocketing a cut and paying themselves. All, of course, leftist politicians or bureaucrats or bureaucrat wannabes. This is what's been going on in the United States for decades and why Trump and Doge are so important. Let me know what you think in the comments. What do you think should happen to Gavin Newsom and his band of cronies in California? And what do you think should happen for another illegal alien issued a commercial driver's license by the state of California that is now responsible for the deaths of American citizens? Not only should that illegal criminal alien be held to account, but the people who gave him the CDL should be held to account. They should be sued by the family members. They should also be held to criminal account. This is criminal negligence, giving CDLs to illegal aliens who you don't even know if they can read or write or speak English. This is absolutely amazing. Imagine working for E&R, not being able to communicate with your patients. Oh yeah, exactly. It's crazy. It's nonsense that you cannot speak the language. Now, I have another story that we want to get to. The other breaking story is that the summit between Putin and Trump is off, at least for now, maybe indefinitely. But let's get into that. Thanks so much for being here. Before we do, please smash that like button for me, subscribe, turn on the notifications. I really appreciate everybody rolling up. If you haven't already, if you like the content, share Courageous Media with everybody that you know. I wanted to get into this story because remember, we were supposed to have a Trump-Putin summit in about 2 weeks in Budapest, but that looks like it is not going to happen, at least not anytime soon. Check this out. As Trump was meeting with the NATO commander in the White House. Here we go.
When we canceled the meeting with President Putin, it didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel like we were going to get to the place we have to get, so I canceled it. But we'll do it in the future. But next week we'll be with many of you in those locations that I told you. Then it's back to Washington. So
Trump's meeting with Putin is currently off. It was postponed. I've got the Fox News story, and then we're going to dive into a little bit of background on this because from the cancellation of the Putin summit, Trump has initiated new sanctions against Russia. So let's dive in to the Fox News account of this because it's pretty interesting. Trump is starting to play hardball with Putin now. I think he's had enough of Putin's scheming, his delays, his nonsense. So check this out.
Fox News alert, we learned just a short time ago through the White House that there will be no plans in the near future for President Trump to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin. This fresh off of a meeting and a productive call, it was described, between Secretary Rubio and Foreign Minister Lavrov. Brent Sadler is joining us now, a retired Navy captain, former Pentagon official, and senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Thank you very much for joining us, Brent. This was determined that it was a productive call, we are told. Therefore, an additional in-person meeting between the two leaders is not necessary. What is your reaction to that?
Well, if the summit meeting between Putin and Trump is off, then I think it was pretty clear the Russians were buying for time and doing a replay of stringing along President Trump. And that's certainly not a meeting worth taking between the two leaders.
Okay, so how are we supposed to interpret this, especially based on what we learned after the fact, that it was Russian President Vladimir Putin who called President Trump for that lengthy phone call at the White House?
Yeah, President Putin in Moscow certainly doesn't want to see secondary sanctions. That was the trigger for him getting on an airplane to go to Alaska, and he was successful because he basically blunted that hit. But now the threat is of additional weapons going to Ukraine that actually could exasperate his wartime efforts on the battlefield, talking about Tomahawks, but also Iran missiles making the way to Ukraine. So, of course, he's going to make a call, and he's willing to get on a plane again, perhaps to go meet Trump somewhere in Europe, to try to delay again until the Russians make meaning.
So, exactly. I think there are two things that worry Putin in this whole grand scheme. One is the secondary sanctions, especially if Trump ponies up and says, okay, not only are we sanctioning Russian oil, but if you buy Russian oil, then the tariffs that you get from the United States will be 300%. So if he goes to China and India and says, hey, guys, if you don't have to, because I think India stopped now. But if he goes to the two major buyers were China and India, if he goes to them and says, if you buy Russian oil, then any products you send to the United States will be tariffed at 300%. He would essentially shut down exports right then and there. And those two countries would have a choice: buy Russian oil and do not engage in the US consumer market, or stop buying Russian oil. And I guarantee you that most likely what would happen at that point, especially with those two countries, because they are heavily export driven, is they would stop buying Russian oil, at least temporarily, or they try to hide it or do something. So you've got that. Then you've got the other thing, which is the potential for the US to allow Ukraine, via its financing partners in the EU, to buy American Tomahawk cruise missiles, which have range of hundreds of miles. Now imagine Zelensky, if he's smart, if he gets a hold of deep interdiction missiles like Tomahawks, essentially targeting the Russian oil industry. What if he went and bought several hundred Tomahawks and just started targeting refineries, started targeting wells, started targeting shipping, debarkment points, where so that he could basically shut down or vastly hinder the ability of Russia to export oil. And if Russia cannot export oil, Russia is not funding this war. This is happening at the same time that Russia is making almost no gains in everything that I've seen on the battlefield. They are scrapping and clawing for meters. They have not taken Pokrovsk yet. They have not taken the secondary villages that would even lead to them mounting an offensive against Pokrovsk. So you've got big problems on the Russian side of things as well. Let me know what you think in the comments. This is why I think that Trump canceled the summit, because Putin made calls as soon as he heard about secondary sanctions and about the Tomahawk missiles. And I think Trump, from what my read is that Trump said, okay, fine, we'll meet in Budapest. I want a ceasefire. I want at least a freeze to the war. Everybody stop while we have this summit. And Putin was like, no. And so Trump basically said, all you're going to do, this is just another delay tactic. You did this before. You did this in Anchorage. I'm not having it. And that's why I think that Trump canceled this, especially given what he did afterwards. But let's keep going.
Full sacrifices on the battlefield, stopping the fighting, stopping the strikes, then I think things might change in a real way that make a meeting more worthwhile.
Okay, so we're waiting on the White House description of this call and any details from it that led to this announcement that the meeting is off, Brent. But Lavrov today held I believe this was some sort of press conference that he delivered. And he said Russia has not changed its position compared to the understandings reached during the extensive negotiations between Putin and Trump in Alaska. So Russia has not changed its positions compared to the understandings reached in that meeting or the negotiations that Putin and Trump then had in Alaska. That's also brand new detail. Your takeaway from that?
That confirms that Putin was interested in continuing to string things along and buying for time. The weather is turning against the military operations as the changing season there, and you get heavy rains and it turns into a giant mud pit. So their military operations are going to slow down anyway. But they're trying to beg for time in order to make up more ground and make their negotiating position stronger in any type of ceasefire. And it was pretty clear now, as more and more details are coming in, the administration wasn't going to have any of it. It's not worth the time to meet. But until economic sanctions on the benefactors to Moscow, like China and India, they're not going to see much pressure or compellence to get Putin to the table.
Well, there.
Exactly. And I think that's why Trump canceled the summit, because Putin essentially said, no, I want more of the Donbass, and I'm going to keep fighting and scrapping and killing people until I get what I want. And Trump's basically said no. And the reason I believe we know he said no is this next video, where Trump actually takes it a step further. Check this out.
Americans are dealing with high grocery prices, a frozen housing market, and a government that is shut down with no end in sight.
It's a legitimate question, but I actually think you need to turn this on its head, which is what Donald Trump is very, very good at. So right now you have a bunch of countries in Asia and Europe and elsewhere that are spending money buying Russian gas. If they continue buying Russian oil, they are funding that part of the war. What you really need to make sure they are not doing is funding the war. If Russia doesn't have the money anymore, then they cannot continue the war. If he wants to work with NATO, if any of the NATO countries are buying that oil, that needs to stop right now. And that is one of the quickest, easiest ways to stop this war. So expanding trade and U.S. involvement in exporting oil will also create more jobs here at home and solve some of those economic problems you are talking about, especially if we continue to bring down gas prices. We can make life easier for Americans, especially if we have foreign customers.
Exactly. So Trump has now hinted at he's going to impose secondary sanctions on Russian oil exports, meaning if you buy Russian oil, if you are China, if you are India, if you are any European country, you buy Russian oil, your export tariffs to the United States will be tripled, quadrupled, whatever the case may be. And that will essentially halt people from buying Russian oil. At the same time, Trump has been actively working to increase U.S. oil production and being able, and especially LNG, and being able to ship that to Europe. So we can actually create new jobs here at home. We can thwart the Russian war effort because they will start running out of money. And so you've got Putin basically buying for time. Now, why would Putin take this strategy? Why not simply end the war, like he was willing to do at least 2 years ago when they went to Turkey, Istanbul, when they had an accord with Zelensky. And remember that was when the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson was dispatched to go tell Zelensky don't sign the deal. Why now? I think the problem is internally. Putin has gotten so embedded. He's gotten entangled in this war. And it's very hard for him now to disentangle himself without getting some major concessions so that he can say it was a win. If he doesn't get those major concessions, it will look internally like he got played, like he got beat. It cannot look like he got beat by Ukraine, or Putin will be in effect possibly signing his own death warrant, at least politically. He could be out of power as other Russian interests and hardliners and oligarchs say, no, we're done with this guy. So I think Putin's got some internal problems that are forcing his hand somewhat to stay in this fight and to try to get more land, to get more concessions. But I don't think it's going to work. I think Trump is onto this game now. And I think Trump is seeing he's starting to get a feel of exactly what he needs to do to pressure the Russians without escalation. For example, if he simply allows Ukraine to buy U.S. cruise missiles, he's not giving them away, not like under Biden when we were giving them. So we can't be called a co-conspirator in this. No. We're simply an arms merchant. We're going to sell cruise missiles to people to the highest bidder, right? If you're one of our quote unquote friends and you want to buy American Tomahawk missiles, hey, we'll sell them to you. In this particular case, the EU is going to be spending the money based on Trump's previous agreements and all this. So our defense contractors will get paid. They will ship cruise missiles and others to Ukraine, who now gives them deep interdiction capability. At the same time, Trump, if he secondary sanctions China and India, specifically those are the two biggest, with secondary sanctions on Russian oil to prevent them from buying Russian oil, you can effectively start shutting down the Russian economy. Let me know what you think in the comments. Really appreciate Reppins12 rolling up, Resnap in the house. Thanks so much for being here. You guys are awesome. And this is absolutely crazy. Crazy what's going on. Reppins, they are Resnap, thanks so much for your pitch on the No Kings protest. That was an absolute nutcase going on there. So I really appreciate everybody being here. Thanks so much. Remember, please smash that like button, subscribe, turn on the notifications if you haven't already. Also, go over to Chris Highland, the Chris Highland Show. Check out some of our faith-based apologetics videos. We've got a couple more posted up there. Would love to see you over there as well. Remember that God is good and he is sovereign. It'll all be good in the end. Like, comment, subscribe, and please remember to share Courageous Media with everybody that you know. Till I catch you next time.